Julian it was always his idea, I think, after Gosford Park, knowing that there was a series that you could use inspired by that. But he never felt inclined to write it. He just didn't feel it, couldn't quite see where it was going to go. And it was Gareth Neame at Carnival, who just went to him and said, what about it?
I do like dramas that are about workplaces and about hierarchy, and I think that audiences enjoy immersing themselves in a world and understanding how everyone interrelates. Hopefully the audience would enjoy all of the trappings that are associated with any period drama, but they might also think it's a contemporary piece.
What should we call each other? Well, we could always start with Mrs. Crawley and Lady Grantham.
You can't do very much as an actress unless you have the proper words to say, especially something like this, which...
Well, we have tried.
We have tried.
In the past.
We've tried quite often in the past, but it made much easier when you have proper things to say.
I mean, what I think is so brilliant is that this is not an adaptation of anything. I think to adapt something, to have these wonderful ideas, you know... Original, yes, is stunning.
Yes, and to follow these people's journeys through. And he's equally as at home with all the layers of stratas of society and gives them all such rich lives and storyline.
I'm sorry, Your Lordship. Mr. Bates, you may go now.
Stay where you are. Nobody's going anywhere.
He manages in a couple of sentences or a tiny short scene for you to get the measure of the character, both as the actor doing it and hopefully as the viewer watching.
Is this a public holiday no one's told me of?
To get the essence of the person within half a page. It's extraordinary, really.
Rather surreal, actually, in a funny way, that they're saying these things that came out of your head, and they have names that came out of your head. And in fact, it wouldn't exist at all if you hadn't thought, I think we'll have a doctor, Dr. Clarkson. And suddenly there he is. And there's an actor going off for his fitting. All of that is very bizarre and rather rewarding. But as I say, it's surreal more than anything. We have got 16 principal characters who have to be kept in play. And, and that is rather the trick of it, really. I mean, that's what they would call the challenge. That you do have to do that. You have to keep 16 plates on a stick at once.
I mean, you've got from the legendary Maggie Smith down to these,
The appalling Thomas Howes, who really shouldn't be allowed on a film set.
I'm glad you said that, Hugh, because I didn't want to have to say that. To these really talented youngsters. It's great, and there's a camaraderie that you get with a theatre company, which is, we all like.
Siobhan! Jeez, if you're coming through, come through, come on. Yeah, shame on you. Shame on you. Take 3.
One of the great reasons I did this is actually to work with Maggie, however much we dislike each other. Because I as a younger actress, only slightly, but a bit younger, only just a little bit, when I was a young woman and starting out, the person I admired more than anyone was Maggie Smith. So I saw her in everything. At the National Theatre, and
when you were at school?
No, I was at drama school, I think, and I said I wished I could be like her, which I never could actually. But
Penelope, no, I'm very touched.
I know, but that's the truth. So there we go. So it's like working with a heroine, and one doesn't have many as you grow older.
Oh, do stop.
So there you go. I can only say that. There you
well,
go.
I'm
I know you in real life.
I know you do. I can tell, but I'm very humbled by that. It's terribly nice of you. Don't you agree, Carson?
I do, my lady.
Just before we started filming, Alistair, our historical advisor, made a very good comment, I thought, to the actors. I overheard it and thought this was jolly useful. Was he met with all of the actors playing the staff, and he said, that family, that's your soap opera. Their lives of the family that own this house and live in it. That's where you get your gossip from.
Alistair Bruce is the oracle, man. I mean, I've not asked him a question yet that he hasn't provided the answers. Do you know what I mean? I've even asked him about other questions like love and life in general, and he's just he's unbelievable. He's a sage. You can ask him anything, and he will invariably come up with the answers.
He's taught you how to pour a great cup of tea as well.
Yeah,
I've made Rob comes to my trailer and pours
to sort of practice.
Alistair taught me the whole thing about literally dressing the formal collars and what order everything would go on and how things are laid out, and so you just get these little master classes all the time depending on what the scene requires.
Well, actors are brilliant because they can adopt quite a lot of information and make magic with it. My role as the historical advisor is to guide the directors. If the subconscious is satisfied that everything is right, then I think people will enjoy it more and get the story better.
She wants a different life.
But why? I should far prefer to be a maid in a large and pleasant house.
Primarily, my job was to set up a look and a feel and a style. For the most part, there's quite an elegance to what we've shot above stairs. It's quite, we see more of the house. It's far more reserved. It's more elegant and more poised. Very good word. Poised. and so we use quite slowly tracking cameras and quite sort of classical compositions. And then below stairs, there's a lot more energy. There's a lot more handheld cameras. There's a lot more cameras that are sort of moving around along corridors and moments which are grabbed and almost just capturing glimpses of things and keeping up that energy. So we've got sort of two sort of very quite contrasting worlds that that collide at times.
Daisy, did you hear me call, or have you gone selectively deaf?
No, Mrs. Patmore.
Then might I remind you we are preparing dinner for your future employer, and if it goes wrong, I'll be telling them why.
I mean, to build this as a set, A, you couldn't, and B, if you did, you'd have used up all your budget on one room. So you get all that, but what you don't get, of course, anymore is the attics or the kitchens, because they have been changed beyond recognition, and so you're always going to end up building those. And they were built at Ealing, and so we had this routine of kind of a week at Ealing and a week here, which actually I think worked pretty well.
Anna's made me an armband, Mr. Carson. For my mother. Can I wear it?
We're sort of on our best behaviour here, aren't we? Can't really make a mess. So
I mean, we trash Ealing when we go
there. Yeah. But the sets are fantastic in Ealing. They really are cavernous and labyrinthine.
They're fantastic.
Yeah, so you really get the atmosphere of the downstairs.
We've built the kitchen, the servants' hall, which is in fact the works canteen really, for want of a better word, and connecting corridors, and the butler's pantry, which is Carson's office and Mrs. Hughes' office. Quite a mishmash of what is their working life. Pride and joy is probably the stove, which is actually made of timber, so not metal as it looks. I suppose the next big hub of activity is the servants' hall.
And they're off.
The key to this whole room is the bells, because once they're having their food, they don't stop work. They can be called, and all of these actually work. We've got a little thing of pulleys around the back. Screws, a bit of timber, a bit of string. There we are.
We dress about 3 times a day. There's usually a dress for the morning, and then if we go riding in the afternoon, there's a whole outfit change, and then dinner in the evening. Actually, there's a lot of envy from downstairs.
There's costume envy going on. Yeah, I've got to say.
Because we have...
As the maids, we only get 2 dresses, and they're very plain. So when we dress the girls, we're just like that. Oh,
yeah.
I love that dress.
Yeah.
I love that dress.
At this time, because we're covering upstairs, downstairs, and the aristocracy, they ought to be changing their clothes all the time throughout the day. So that's a major challenge in itself. What we try and do when we make costumes is try and have elements of original things to try and keep reality there.
Every single girl on the show has had one episode at least with their corset where every organ has just rebelled and they just haven't been able to continue for a little bit. And then your body does adjust to it. It alters the way you move and breathe and speak, and it's sort of your whole relationship to your physicality is completely different.
I took a lot of my reference from Paris, because Paris was a huge influence over how the English were looking at that particular time. So it was a lovely fluid sort of period, very nice and soft and rather gorgeous for the girls. So I researched that small period, and then you bring in the personalities of all the artists involved and all the characters involved. And then you try and add the period and the characters together. And hopefully you'll just get different personalities with different looks. And that's including the downstairs as well.
When they asked me if I'd do the job, I thought, please let me have a really bad hairdo and sideburns, and I've got them.
And all this stuff that I do is so physical, and I just don't understand how anyone did it. You know, like a young girl, because I'm carrying all this stuff to do the fires for what, 5 minutes, and then they say cut, and then I put it all down. Yeah, and my hands have got all these marks on them. Everything's so heavy.
Have you picked the pans
Yeah,
up?
and like the thing that you pour the water out of, it's just...
Everything is 14 times heavier than anything you've ever lifted, and that's without anything in it.
Yeah,
Mind you, they're very good, aren't they? Because they put things in and have it smoking and,
Yeah.
and looks like proper food.
Most of the cast are really good fun and like a bit of a giggle, so that's great. And when we're all together as a big gang, I'm sure we're driving the crew mad because we don't shut up when they need us to a lot of the time. But I like that, especially with the staff downstairs. Obviously, I have more to do with them en masse than I do upstairs, but we have really good crack together, a lot of us. So, and hopefully that'll come across to show that we are a family unit, really, like families are, and people who work together all the time.
Some days are really long. You know, if you're filming a dining scene, which is a couple of pages long, and you've got a lot of people there, it does take almost all day, sort of 10, 12 hours to film, but everyone now is at the point where we all know one another and we're so much more relaxed. And so, and because of that, you know, it keeps energy up, and it's just been the most amazing experience, really.
It's breathtaking, and it's just a small house for a family of 5, you know, a few servants. But it's incredible. I mean, the paintings, the furniture.
Well, I mean, and they're not covered up. You know, all it takes is a stray can of Coke and that going up the wall, and that's the budget gone. Isn't it? So we have to be very careful. But it, as you say, it does. It's worth it because it lends that air of authenticity. It makes you stand differently, doesn't it?
We have done big films before, but normally then, you know, after 2 or 3 weeks, they go. The interesting thing here is we're all trying to get on sufficiently well. But you're all back every month, and then possibly, I hope it's really successful for longer. So it's everybody trying to get on, which you can see, which is also quite funny, really. So it's kind of a balancing act. There's an awful lot of them, so I'm not going to say any more. But anyway.